Hello, welcome to Oxford Heirlooms. I'm starting project number 2, creating a day gown, a diaper cover, and a bonnet. Now I'm doing some prep work right now on my pattern pieces. I have cut out some of the pieces, but I need to transfer some markings, so I'm going to be doing that today. Now the first thing I cut out was I cut out 1.5 yards of my Swiss edging, which is going to be my collar for the little day gown that I'm making. The second piece that I've cut out is for the diaper cover. Now this pattern piece comes from the pattern by Children's Corner. It's called Hand Sewing 2, and it's their diaper cover. But if you don't have this particular pattern, but you've got a diaper cover pattern, that'll do also. I've also cut out a rectangle of fabric that I'm going to use to create the bonnet that's going to go with this day gown. Now the pattern, for lack of a better word, that I use for that, this little teacup comes from a book by Sarah Howard Stone called French Hand Sewing for Infants. And in it, it gives you the dimensions for an infant bonnet. And I make a lot of bonnets based upon those dimensions. Okay, so I have cut out the neck bias band. It says cut out 1 piece, so I've got 1 piece for that. I've also cut out my sleeves. Now, when I do the bottom of the sleeves, I may be altering it some because there's a fold line down here where I'm supposed to fold it and hem it. But I think, I've already decided that I'm going to do some type of little ruffle on the end. So I may be altering that later on. So just go ahead and cut out the pattern piece to the correct size. And as we create the little gown, we will make some adjustments. Okay, now I have cut out the back of the day gown. And I've also cut out the front of the day gown. Now I'm going to work with I think I'll work with the back piece first. Now on this day gown, it is smocked on the front. It's also smocked on the back. Okay, now here is the picture of the day gown that I am planning to create. Okay, it's going to have some smocking on either side of the buttons, a smocked collar, and this pattern has smocking on the back side of the garment also. So what I've done is I've cut out the pattern pieces for the back piece of the pattern. I cut a tiny little hole in my pattern piece, not in my fabric, and I used my blue marking pen and I made a mark right down here where this is going to be the area that I smock. And it needs to go up to this line right here. And then the last row of smocking will be this line down here. Now, I've also, not sure if you can see this, but I have marked the center of the fabric, or the center back of the fabric. Okay, now, since I've got these markings in here, I'm gonna go ahead and take my pins out. I won't need this pattern piece again now that I've cut out the back of the garment. So I'll put that aside over here. Okay, now as I'm looking at the back, I've got a mark here in the back center. That way, when I start doing my smocking, I can start smocking from the center and work my way to the sides. Now, according to this pattern, I'm supposed to pleat the area between the lines. So I'm going to go ahead with my blue fabric marking pen. I'm going to draw a line from the top of the neck down to where the smocking is supposed to stop. And I'm going to draw another line near the other armhole. Well, that one, I think I missed. Must have been drawing on the ruler because it didn't draw on the fabric. Okay, now using my longer ruler, I need to have a line that when I run it through the pleating machine, I can follow this line so that I make sure this line becomes my bottom row of smocking. So I've drawn these lines on the fabric. I'm sure you can see that. Let me see if we can you see those lines that I've drawn on here? Okay, so I'll put that piece of fabric aside and I'll be pleating it in a little while. Now I'm going to come back to my front piece. Now, the front of this gown has to be a mirror image of each other. So what I've done is up at the top, I've made some marks. I've made a mark on the fold line. I've made a mark where the smocking is supposed to stop. And I've made a mark where the smocking is supposed to stop over near the armhole. Now, this particular pattern, if you look at the pattern, and I studied the pattern for a little bit, it has a button placket that only goes about halfway down the garment. And as I was looking at the pattern pieces, there would be a seam from this buttonhole placket down to the bottom of the garment. And I really don't like to have seams right in the front of garments like that. So what I'm gonna do is I'm going to have my button, my garment will open completely in the front, so it won't be sewn together here on the bottoms. So I've adjusted the pattern just slightly. The pattern had a line right about here where the facing only went down this far, and then you started sewing from here on back. So I have just included more facing on my pattern piece. Okay, now once again, I've marked on my pattern, I've made some tiny holes so that I could use my fabric marking pen and mark where the position of the last smocking row. Okay, so I'm gonna take my pins out again. Now I haven't marked for the buttons yet because since I've got 9 buttons and I'm going to want to evenly space them down the garment, and I will figure that out later when it's time for me to mark and make buttonholes. Okay, now I'm gonna do like I did on the back. I'm gonna draw a line from the top to the dot that represents the bottom smocking row over here by the sleeve. And here at the front opening, the smocking is supposed to stop because we've got to have room for the facing and the buttonholes to come in right here. And then this line right here will represent the bottom row of smocking. So when I run it through my pleater, that will be my bottom line. Now I've got to turn this over. Now these original lines, they actually came through 2 layers of cloth, so I don't have to mark them again. And I'll draw a line that I'll follow with my pleating machine. And in the next video, I'll be pleating, but I'm not going to do that right now. I'm just transferring fabric markings in preparation of doing other things. Okay, so I've got my 2 front pieces. This will be my front edge where my buttonholes will go. This is the armhole, this is the side. I've got my back piece that I opened up. It's no longer folded in half, but I've got my back piece. It's marked for the smocking area, so when I run it through the pleater, I know where to position the last pleating row. And I've got my sleeve. I've got my neck facing. I've got the guide for the teacup bonnet. And I've also got the diaper cover cut out. Okay, so that's what I'm doing today. And like I said, in the next video, I will be running my fabric through the pleater in order to get ready to do some smocking. Okay, but that's what I'm doing today. Now, right here at the end of this video, I'm going to insert a slide that has a materials list. So if you want to follow along with this project, these are the materials that you will need in order to create this with me. Thank you.